Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Outcast, a political podcast from the perspective of young Christians. Our mission is to provide political and societal opinions from the Christian worldview. My name is Aaron, and I'm joined here with my co host Jared
Hello, thanks for joining.
and Dale.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you guys join me today. Tonight's discussion is probably going to mainly focus on the Trump and Elon Musk conversation that happened, or meeting, or whatever you want to call it. We just got done listening to that. There's a lot of other things going on
Especially when it
politically
comes
right
to
now.
especially we'll give a quick recap of like the presidential race. Neither him or her have had a interview in, I believe it's up to 21 or 22 days now. So we can.
Let's also look at the ridiculousness of that, right? The Democratic Party, who is quote unquote the party of democracy, has a nominee that was actually never nominated by voters.
hmm
She was put up by the last nominee. That's not the same thing. I find the entire situation pretty ridiculous, and I'm quite surprised not as many people are really making, an outburst over this, considering Kamala is the lowest rated vice president in
Oh
American
yeah,
history.
she's
It's
never.
absolutely insane. I feel like every conversation, every press conference that I've ever seen her in, I have no idea what's going on. I thought Joe Biden was confusing. She confuses me, and so it'll be very interesting to see how this goes. I wonder if people will make a bigger deal out of that, right? They're pushing, oh, your democracy's in danger with Trump and his pick, but yet they're running with the nominees that weren't even democratically voted.
Yeah, and with that, like a monarchy, how it just passes from one person to the next, there was no vote for Kamala to become the Democratic nominee when, it said their party name is Democrats, but there was no actual Democratic vote for her to become the nominee. It was just a transfer of power from one person to the next. So they don't want people to be voting for what is best for the country. Because if you just look at the interview between Trump and Elon just tonight, there was another attack on X, a cyber attack on X, specifically to keep people from hearing more information because they don't want people to hear more information so that people don't have a more educated vote. They want people to only know what they want them to know.
Right. They really don't.
Exactly.
They do not want you to make your own decisions. They want to make their. They want to make your decisions for you, and you can really see that.
Yeah.
Like if you go back to the Kamala Harris thing for a second, not only was she never democratically elected as the nominee in this run, but in 2020, if anyone remembers that, it's kind of hard because a lot's happened. But in 2020, she was running for president against Joe Biden, and everyone's like, "Oh, she's gonna come out as the nominee." Well, what happened was from her mismanagement of campaign funds to her lack of substance, she never received a single primary vote because she dropped out of the race before they moved to the Iowa caucus. She completely dropped out, and that was
And
because she wasn't popular. People got to know more about her, and the more they knew about her, the
yeah,
more they didn't trust her, and the more they didn't like her.
because that speaks to her character. Because she went from debating against Joe Biden, calling him a racist, to being his vice presidential pick and saying like he's the most wonderful person. She
Oh
kept
yeah.
like about her character, she kept lying saying that Joe Biden was okay. Joe Biden is still not okay.
Oh yeah, the fact that she hasn't 25th Amendmented him, despite the fact that he's no longer the nominee. He's not the nominee anymore because he's like, oh well, they're like, oh, his health is too bad to be the nominee. Why on earth is he the most power? Is he allowed to be in the most powerful position in the world? And for that fact, in world history,
hmm
America's we're still the most powerful military in the world by far. It's the only reason China hasn't tried to attack us or Russia hasn't tried to attack us. It's we are literally the most powerful country, and therefore the president of the United States is the president of the most powerful country in the world that has ever been, and therefore is the most powerful person in the world that has, as a leader that has been up to date.
Yeah, I saw a ranking one time of the world's most powerful militaries ranked, and it made me laugh because it was first place, the United States military, second place, the United States Navy, and then it was China and some others that go with that order. I mean, America has a massive military, and especially when you're combining our regular military and our Navy, which is it's really an army of its own. They have their own special forces units, they have ground units, air units. It's ridiculous. You have somebody like current President Joe Biden who, with all due respect, if you watch any speech or anything that he's on the stage, I like it has genuine concern for me. It really does bother me seeing him just aimlessly walk around on a stage because I don't
And
know if anybody else here has kind of seen like their own grandparents kind of go into dementia and stuff like that, but it really looks like that. And it's kind of gut-wrenching to kind of see the leader of the free world kind of wander around like a
yeah,
confused
the person
grandpa,
that represents you
whether
as a nation.
yeah, exactly. And now I'm not gonna say, oh, he's just a confused grandpa. He's innocent. There's a lot of things that Joe Biden has done over his course in politics that are completely terrible, and you will not see in the news. I mean, one key example is he voted against the integration of white and blacks in schools
Oh
because he
yeah.
stated that he didn't want his kid growing up in a racial jungle. And
Hmm.
yet you won't see anybody report that now. Like it's absolutely insane. Joe Biden has quite literally been on the wrong side of every piece of legislation that has been, offered um
Domestic and foreign.
since he's been in
Oh,
office. Yeah,
especially
it's
foreign,
it's
especially
really
foreign.
crazy.
He was one of the ones in the room. He ran on this. He said he was proud of it. I was very against Obama taking out Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, the person that we put at the head of, the Taliban, the person that we were literally like, this is the person we have to kill for killing 3,000 Americans on September 11th, 2001. The reason we went to war against terror. And he was
And
like, "Oh, I don't want to take him. I
he
don't think it's a
opposed
good
it.
idea."
Yeah. But not
Ridiculous.
only did he oppose that, just recently the Biden Harris administration just attempted a plea deal to get the orchestrators of 9/11 off of the death sentence.
Yeah, no.
And then they had to go and scrap it because the American public found out and said, "This is how you're treating the people that killed thousands of Americans?"
The fact that they would have done it if they didn't get kickback. The only reason they didn't do it is because the American people found out. They were gonna
Yeah.
give them basically the deal was you admit to murdering 3,000 people, and then you get to live your life sentence somewhere. Not even at Gitmo because they're trying to close down Gitmo, but
Mhm.
somewhere else. And it's like, excuse me, sir, you killed 3,000 Americans. What's your punishment? Oh yes, you get to go stay in a resort hotel called a quote unquote prison. And so
For 3 meals a day, you have free time to work out, to read, to study, to get a degree. Yeah,
yeah, no, it's
that's how
like,
they're treating criminals that kill people. Not just terrorists.
oh yeah,
That's how they're treating illegal immigrants that come across the border illegally, which is one, their first crime, and
yep,
two, then they go out and commit other crimes: murder, rape, theft, assault on police officers. That's how the Biden Harris administration treats criminals in our country.
yeah, no,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, we have some places where quite literally people are committing murder and they're being released without bail, and then they're going back to find them for the trial, and of course you're not going to find them. You
No,
released them without bail, they got out. You'll never find them again.
they
It's
went to commit
absolutely
another crime.
ridiculous. Yeah, they probably did move to another state and they're illegal. There's no proper documentation or anything for them. I mean, it's easy to disappear. A lot of this stuff has been absolutely wild, and especially when we get into illegal immigration. And look, I'm going to preface this. right away. My dad is an immigrant. My dad actually came to the United States illegally, but within a week, he got his work visa and he enrolled himself into English school and he got a job. My dad did not play around with any of that. And he tells me to this day that there's no excuse for illegals because it took him with literally nothing. He got threatened by a gang while back home, hopped on a bus that night, and came to the United States with only the money in his wallet. And by the end of the week, he had a work visa, he had a job, and he had enrolled himself in the English school. There's no excuse, right? Because these people are coming over and they're not getting, they're not getting work visas, they're not getting any kind of status that would make it legal for them to be here. Instead, they're taking jobs, they're taking resources that are here for the people that have worked hard. Let's not even
That
talk.
is, if they take jobs,
You
because
know,
there
yeah,
are a lot of illegal immigrants. Uh, they're legal immigrants as well, but the main problem is the actual crime of illegal immigration. But there's a lot
hmm
of them that don't take jobs. They just uh, take from all of the government benefits that should be going to Americans, people that pay taxes, but instead they're going to people that aren't part of our country and they don't want to become part of the country either.
exactly. The biggest thing for America, because a lot of people will be like, well, America was founded on immigration. Yeah, you're 100%. People from all over the world fled where they were and came to the United States in hope of building a better life. But what's one
Mhm.
thing different that they did then than they're doing now? Is they integrated into the society to create one country. These people are coming and they're not integrating their culture. They're not integrating anything. In fact, they're keeping to their customs and still proud that they're from their country, and they're causing a lot of issues over this stuff because they're not willing to integrate into things that are, to make the country better.
That's not even talking about the fact that back then we didn't have Social Security and we didn't have federal income tax and we didn't have Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. Like you're talking about things that are baked into the system now that you have to pay into because you're a
Mhm.
born American. If you're an illegal immigrant that isn't registered, has no sort of, you're not paying into the system, but you're taxing on that system is the whole problem. You're not. We'll get into that one time or another.
Yeah.
But like,
We'll definitely have an episode focused on Social Security
oh
and
yeah,
income tax and issues like that. I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring us back around on topic. One thing that I think we're going to go ahead and discuss tonight is the Donald Trump and Elon Musk interview. Now, this was quite interesting to me because, even admitted by Elon in the interview himself, he's always really kind of seen himself as a moderate Democrat. He was waited in line, shake hands with Obama. He did all of these things. He's always typically voted that way and supported that kind of legislation. But what
he
has
voted for
really
Biden
surprised me,
Harris last time
yeah,
too.
exactly. And what has really surprised me is the fact that things are so crazy now that he's kind of sat there and he's told Trump, right, is not, he doesn't really care so much that Trump is a Republican. It's the fact that A, Trump has solutions to problems that we have, and B, Kamala just doesn't. And she'll make things absolutely worse, and he knows that. I mean, Elon Musk is an extremely, extremely smart and intellectual,
Oh yeah,
or yeah, intellectual
individual.
individual. He is way up there. He is probably one of the smartest people in our society today, and he's recognizing these patterns. He's recognizing issues that are going to be caused. He's seen, I mean, even he himself has moved out of California and kind of relocated everything into Texas due to all the craziness that has happened in California. And so it was very interesting when he asked Donald Trump for an interview. And so we're going to go ahead and discuss the different parts in that and things that really got us and got our attention on it. I think I'm going to go ahead and start. The first topic that I found absolutely, I want to say kind of hilarious that Trump wanted to do was Trump wants to, what is it? The Department of Education. He wants to
Yeah, he wants to
take
just
funding away from the Department of
well, no, he wants to
Education
dissolve it. He wants to
and
dissolve the
give he
Department
wants
of
to
Education.
dissolve it, and he wants to give education back to the states to allow the states to kind of in a real sense compete for higher test scores, because I don't think most Americans actually notice this, but they were talking about this with the statistics. America is typically consistently listed at the bottom of the top 40 education countries. That's outrageous. We are at
Oh yeah,
the like consistently bottom, like 40 and 38. They were specifically mentioning as like our numbers in the polls, while these other countries are listed, one, two, and three. China's typically consistently in the top 10 now. They've really stepped up their education. And what do we see in our public schools? One of my buddies is a public school teacher. His school district just moved a failing grade starts at a 50%. You get an F if you get a like 50 or no, is it a 49 and below? I think it's a 49 and below.
Sounds right.
That is absolutely wild. We are dumbing down our kids at a ridiculous rate. And when you look at most of this legislation, they use it to say, oh, because the previous grades are, they go against the colored minorities. What? Are you crazy? Maybe it's you just have bad teachers and bad educators.
I mean they also blame it on
And
funding. Oh, we don't have enough funding. We don't have
You
enough
don't
right.
have enough
funding.
funding. You don't have it's so outrageous to me that they're blaming it on, on black populations specifically. And a lot of the articles they're talking about like inner city kids, and specifically with the uh, black colored kids having some of the lowest scores, and so they're having to raise it. And I'm like, you guys, you have some of the worst education in these inner city schools. You have teachers that don't actually care for the kids. Your education is poor. You don't require anything of your kids. You don't do anything that asks them to grow. You don't do anything that stretches them, that intrigues their minds for them to learn. Of course your grades are going down. Don't blame it on the color of the kids. I
I
went to
mean,
school in a public or in a private school from middle school and on, and it doesn't matter what race you were. I mean, almost all of those kids in that school were brilliant. They were all testing. We were all testing actually in the college level, and when we took our high school exams. I
and
mean,
there
it
were
doesn't. It's
how many
not.
kids in that school?
I mean, it wasn't a big school. 50, I think, what at the time when I graduated, 57 kids in the school. So not big at all.
you were the
From
And
what
only one of your
grades?
graduating class, correct?
from K through 12th grade, we had 57 kids. In high school, I believe we had 12. We had me. Um, oh goodness, I was the only 12th grader. I had some weird schooling stuff, one-on-ones with teachers, kind of awkward. But the crazy thing is too, is like I was the only white kid in when I was a senior, I was the only white kid in the high school class.
Oh yeah.
And I was actually one like on the lower spectrum of some of the testing that we did. I mean, all of our colored kids were scoring immediately high because you know what? It's not about race when it comes to education. It's individual. People
It's
have
about
different,
pushing people to have standards. If you
exactly, and
don't push people to have standards, then people will never reach any goals. They'll never hit any milestones because you don't expect anything from them. You can't expect them to grow. It's the same way with physical training. If you want to reach a certain physique, you have to actually train. You can't just, well, I'm not hitting that, so I'm actually not working out. So what I'm going to do is just shift the goalpost down so I can hit it without doing any work. And if you keep doing that, then you're just going to end up sitting on the couch, 400 pounds.
exactly. And
And
here's
that's what
another
our
thing.
education has done.
And here's the thing too, like for anybody who's listening, none of this is on accident. So one of the first ways to destabilize a country and a people group is to lower the education, because uneducated people are much easier to manipulate. And that's one of the first things that you'll see if you read history when it comes to governments overreaching and taking over, is the de-education of the citizens. That is one of the first things you will always see, because a dumb person won't see anything coming. They can't see, or they can't read the writing that's on the wall because they never learned how to read it. And you'll consistently see this. And we're seeing this today, right? Our own government has taken so many of our freedoms. I mean, there's a list, but one that really irks me is taxes. I don't understand how we haven't had a revolution already just on taxes. I scratched my head and when looking at my paycheck, and I was like, man, I don't remember the government doing 30% of my work. I mean,
Exactly.
shoot, our country started based off of a what was it, like a
2 to
3% T
3%.
tax,
Yeah.
2% T tax, something
Yeah.
like that. That was enough for people to start fighting back. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
absolutely crazy that people are willing to just throw away 30% just because the government says so, which I know I said earlier that we'll come back to and have full episodes on it. But a lot of people don't know that income tax was actually meant to be temporary. It was not meant to stay, but the government realized, oh, we're getting a lot of money from this. We should keep it. And then just tell people, oh, yeah, it's an expected thing to have income tax. Yeah.
And
And so,
even with the income tax and all the money that the government pulls in from its citizens, the current administration, the Biden Harris administration, still cannot stop spending money,
Oh
driving
yeah.
up inflation, making the average American have even less money to work with.
Oh yeah. They even brought that up inside of the interview. Elon, especially, he actually talked to Trump about how he thinks that there should be a commission or a government board overseeing the government spending, saying, "Hey, you have to live within your means," kind of like a person does. And that sounds good. He said, a commission that keeps the country spending only what it needs to, but and Trump was thought that might be a good idea. Doesn't know how it'd work out. That would be cool. Elon has expressed his interest in being a part of that if that's what he wanted to do. One of the other things I
yeah,
thought that was,
that,
I
yeah,
mean, Elon does run a very successful business. So, I
multiple.
mean, so did Trump.
yeah,
So it makes sense to have actual businessmen running the government of the world's largest economy.
exactly. And that's another thing, too, that I feel like people are so stupid that they don't really realize what they're saying. They're like, oh, Trump is going to crash the economy. So is Trump the billionaire who has many, many successful businesses, who knows how to read the market? Is he going to tank it? Or is a bunch of 60 to 80-year-olds who run our country
Who've
that
never had a
haven't been
job.
outside since the 60s, um, ruin it with their bad legislation? I mean, when you
That
really
they've
think
been on a
about it,
government salary for
Yeah.
40 years,
yeah,
multiple
exactly.
decades.
I mean, these people are voting on legislation. They don't even know what it's like to live outside in their own places. One of my favorite
To
pictures that
work.
you can find on the internet is, I think it was Hillary Clinton
Oh yeah,
standing
went
inside
into a
this
working
lady's.
class home.
Yeah, she went into this lady's one bedroom apartment in New York, and this like bedroom was like maybe a 12 by 12, and her face was just that of shock and disgust. And I'm like, you don't realize, like, that's what it's like to live in some of these big cities. Like, it's absolutely insane. And we have these people that haven't lived with the regular population in 40 to 50 years.
They
That's
haven't lived the
absolutely
American dream.
mind-boggling. No, that,
Like
like,
they've made it, but they never lived the American dream. The American dream is coming up from nothing to being as wealthy as you want to be, being as successful as you want to be. It's not having everything handed to you with a silver spoon, being in a government office from when you're in your mid 30s or
Right.
40s.
exactly, exactly. Well, let's finish up with the education. I think it's a really good idea, first of all, for him to dissolve the Board of Education and send that back to the states. A couple of things, and even they were talking about this back and forth. One thing that's going to do is going to create competition between states to provide the best education between all the other states, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you're going to want to be, oh, we have the best education in our state. Our people are the smartest. That's going to happen very quickly. And that's good for us. Competition breeds innovation. You
Good
Right.
for
have
business.
you it's great for business, and then you're not going to have idiots walking around, and it's going to become very clear what states are run by corrupted school boards and what states have poor education. It'll show up extremely quickly, and it'll really let you kind of be able to hone in on these problem areas and try to figure out what is happening and what the cause of it is.
Oh yeah.
One thing like I believe they mentioned California. California's education system is garbage. But we're down here in Texas, and I don't even think Texas, we don't have like the best education in the country either. But it's definitely a lot better than theirs. And what one thing that they said that was absolutely mind-boggling to me is we're consistently rated as one of the lowest countries on the education scale for the top 40, and yet we have the highest cost per pupil of anybody on that list. Where is all that money going? Because it's obviously not going to the education system.
Not going to any help to the students.
Exactly. It's not going to the kids. I mean, look, I have coworkers who sit here and they're constantly like, "I want free education. I want this. I want that." And I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, "No, you don't want free education because free education 9 times out of 10 sucks. You don't
Free,
want the free
nothing is
handout.
free.
Nothing is free. It's going to come out of your taxes." It's still the fact of all of our students are kind of in this mentality now of, "Oh, gimme, 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 the government should pay for me," instead of them wanting to actually work for it. And that's the mindset you see now. People are like, "Oh, I need student loan forgiveness." Yeah, well, at the same time too, you shouldn't have gotten a $200,000 loan out for student loans. And some people will be like, "Oh, well, I had to go to this school." I mean, you didn't have to. You could have found a cheaper, community college somewhere out of state or found some kind of online program you wanted to. But at the same time, too, student loans in colleges are highly, highly predatory, and we'll get into that too. That's a whole nother subject. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, most of us in this group have already graduated, so we know what it's like to pay student bills. We know what it's like to choose colleges and to go back and forth. So this is coming directly from people who have experienced it and have gone through it. And each one of
And we'll
us,
just put this out there, like, the majority of us, we didn't take out student loans. We didn't go to any fancy name colleges. We worked until we earned up enough to go to local community colleges. We got our credits there and we got our degrees, but it's the same piece of paper that you would get from Yale or any other name brand university.
yeah, and sure, yeah, that piece of paper from Yale, it means more, or at least it used to back in the day. I know a lot of people
Not really
have
anymore.
their
Yeah,
opinions on
not really
what
anymore.
these schools mean nowadays, but all you're doing is paying for name. But what you're doing is you're putting yourself into like 20 years of debt just to pay for a name, which is absolutely outrageous.
For
But
something that you'll
anyways,
never
again,
get back.
yeah,
I know during the interview, Trump and Elon talked about his assassination attempt. They talked about the border, talked about inflation.
I mean,
So
yeah.
there's a lot that they covered.
they
They even
really
talked
did.
about foreign policy, about respect, that
Yeah.
a lot of the countries used to respect the United States, but now, based off the president, they don't respect us anymore.
And why would they?
Yeah.
We back out on our allies. It's not even like we have the strongest military, yet we have the weakest backbone.
Weakest resolve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, no,
ridiculous.
really, it's crazy. Well, starting from the top, then we can talk actually the assassination, right? They did talk about the assassination attempt, and that was probably the first 30 minutes
Oh
of their
yeah.
interview. Now, one thing that really surprised me, so the news has been all over the place, right? Everybody's screaming, "It's an inside job, secret security or secret service. They should have known this. It was an inside job. The cops failed. Everybody failed." One thing that really surprised me with Trump is because Trump is no stranger for firing people and talking down about people who are bad at their job. But one thing that really got me is he was very thankful for the people that did do their job. he was praising his Secret Service crew when they tackled him and had him down on the ground. He was praised the sniper for taking that extremely long shot um, in just that short amount of time. It was not a him dogging on people. It was very much a him very thankful that he made it through the situation. And, he gave his condolences out for the family of the firefighter who passed away because he was shot in the head and murdered by the assassin. Um,
Honestly, Trump is alive by an act of God, and Trump understands the value of life more than most people, which is why he respects his Secret Service, policemen, the military so much because he knows and he understands what is at stake when you actually, literally put your life on the line. Like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
he understands that.
Yeah, and what was insane too is even Trump himself was saying, like it was a miracle, it was an act of God. I mean, the sign was on the opposite side of where he typically keeps it. He typically looks at the sign at the end of the speech, and the team had to get it up almost last minute because they didn't really know that he was going to do it. So all of those factors played in. On top of that, him just happening to turn his head exactly as the shot went off, definitely God's providence.
And it's
I
kind of
mean,
comical
you can
what
believe in luck, but when you look at all the factors lined
yeah.
up, it wasn't an accident. Like it wasn't on accident that he dodged that. Like God definitely protected him.
Oh yeah.
You
It's
can see
kind of
that without a
comical
doubt.
what the sign and the PowerPoint was about. It was about illegal immigration. So illegal immigration literally saved Trump's life, and yet it's going to be the political death of Kamala Harris.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Because
that made me laugh so
that's
hard. It was
hilarious.
like they were talking. It was like Trump saved by illegal immigration, dude. That's one of the funniest
The
things I've
Babylon Bee.
heard. Yeah, that's definitely a Babylon Bee article, waiting to happen. But no, it was quite interesting. Even hearing Trump's view of the different things that were happening to even the police officer who had pulled himself on the roof to take a look. The police officer, dropped himself down after the gun was pointed at him. Apparently, he injured his ankle pretty badly as well. That's something I didn't know.
And
But
Trump had
just
nothing
different.
but respect.
He really did. It
Right.
was quite surprising. He was very respectful towards these people. He talked about the family of the
The
firefighter
firefighter.
who passed away. Unimaginable situation. It truly
Corey
is.
Comparator.
Um, okay. Comparator.
Compare.
I
What a
apologize if
name
we
right
butchered
there.
that.
What a name.
So, but praising the family, telling the two victims that did survive, talking about how he was very glad to hear them that they had survived the injuries because he knew that it was very touch and go. So
Humble.
it was very heartwarming and humble to see him not necessarily completely focusing on the fact that he almost died, but he was definitely focusing on how it affected the other people.
Oh yeah. He couldn't
Um,
help but praise the crowd for like 20 minutes about how this giant crowd, which is true, this giant crowd didn't stampede. Which if you've ever
exactly.
seen if you've ever seen any sort of like bomb threat or gun go off at a stadium, those videos, people just panic, but no one did, which is really crazy. And he really appreciates that because that saved lives in and of itself. People not moving, people not running for the hills and trampling each other because there are children there too, and that's usually what happens inside of a stampede. The elderly or the children will get stomped up and because they can't run as fast. And so that was
But
that
these are the
just
kind of people that support Trump.
exactly. Let's see what else. He after we moved on from the they kind of shifted from covering the Trump assassination attempt to covering illegal immigration, and one of the things that Elon Musk says is like Elon Musk is more about like he agrees that it's just a physical issue. You cannot have everyone else in the world be contained within the United States. It's not big enough. And so you have
No.
by that fact, you have to make selections about who does and who doesn't come in. And so, that in itself, you have to make yourself have a border in order to have a country. And Elon Musk talking
And
about
especially
how.
where people are coming from.
Oh yeah, Elon Musk went to Eagle Pass, which is basically the one of the two major cities that are border cities in Texas that are about that butt up to Mexico that people used to illegally pass through, and he's asking all these illegal immigrants, where'd you come from or where you came from. He's like, the vast majority of them are not from Mexico. They're from Cambodia. They're from El Salvador. They're from Pakistan. They're from all these other places. These places that you wouldn't even believe. Like just you're like, how did you get here? And Trump's been really on this point of all these countries are saying, hey, America's basically letting anyone in. Let's get rid of the people we don't want in our country and give it to them so our crime rate goes down, so our economy goes up. And so that was something they hit on. Oh, Elon Musk was like, yeah, it's kind of funny how in one day the Democrats went from, border czar Kamala Harris to, oh no, she was never a border czar. She was never in charge of the border. Whether she's the border czar or not, it doesn't matter with the title. And Trump even said that. It doesn't matter title. It just matters the fact she was in charge of the border. She did a terrible job. We have the worst border we've ever had in history. Why is it the worst border ever? It's because they got rid of all the Trump policies just because they were Trump's, not even because they were bad. They literally got rid of all the Trump immigration policies simply for the fact that Trump instituted them.
Hmm.
And then they stopped building the wall. And then they started kind of building the wall back because they're like, crap, we're in trouble. And
And I just want to point out one falsity that keeps being uh, portrayed by the media, where they keep saying that the border now has less crossings than it did under Trump, which they are comparing literally the very best day under Biden and Harris to the literally the very worst day of Trump.
yeah, because there were
And
massive
you still
caravans
can't
that
even
tried to
make
come
that
to Trump.
comparison.
There was a massive caravan that tried to come in during Donald Trump's presidency, and he kept them out. Well, he kept them. He kept
Oh,
as
I
many.
remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That
That's
was
what
like national news for like almost like
months.
it
And
probably was
Trump's the bad
longer
guy.
than a month.
Trump's the
Yeah,
bad guy for
that
that.
huge care.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris now, on her presidential run, is saying that she's going to be securing up the border, even though she was already tasked with it
She's
when she
currently
was
tasked.
vice president. She's done nothing but make it worse. Trump, on the other hand, had 4 years to act on it. He had the most secure border in a very long time, and as
If
soon as
not
he gets
history.
back into office, he is pledging to have the largest deportation effort ever.
Yeah,
Two
I mean,
very completely opposite points of view from Trump and Kamala.
people forget the fact that she can literally shut the border down today. Biden and her can shut down the border today. They can fix it today. But they're not going to
Hmm.
because they don't care because they're.
To everybody who's listening, if you may be interested or wanting to vote Kamala because she's promising all these things and promising, the no tax on tips, which she completely ripped off of Trump, by the way. Um, uh, she's still the current sitting vice president. She could do this all today. So why doesn't she? Because she's not going to do it, and she's only trying to use it to get your votes. You do realize that she is currently in power. She could definitely bring all of this stuff up to Congress or however it happens. I'm not
And,
too
and
well
even
versed
if
in
you
that, but
think
you
that
guys
she
are.
can't, even if you think that she can't, she can still use the 25th Amendment to remove President Biden, since it's very obvious he is not mentally fit for the office. And
So
she
he's on a
can
beach. He's on a
do
beach.
everything that she's been saying she will do, but she's choosing not to.
Yeah, she's still got
Exactly.
5 months. That's plenty of time for her to try to get legislation passed. It's it's absolutely wild, and especially the no
Oh,
tax on tips. Ma'am, you and Joe Biden passed something that actually made it to where people got taxed more on their tips.
yeah, they
You're a
passed
complete
the.
liar.
Yeah, no, they passed a new IRS stipulation, agreement pact, or whatever, to where it was targeting people who were making, their money on tips, where they could quote unquote more accurately log their tips earnings for taxes. And so, like, she literally has proven the fact that she thinks you're stupid. She thinks you're dumb. She literally has no respect for you or your livelihood or your
Well,
opinions.
to be fair, I don't necessarily think she thinks that you're dumb. I think that she herself is kind of probably not the brightest, to put it the most politically correct way.
Are you calling her dumb?
I was watching her try to answer something earlier today on how she was going to solve inflation. And she sat there, stared at the camera for like 15 seconds, and then was like, "So inflation has gotten high and people are paying more for goods." And I was like, "Yeah." And then it just kind of went nowhere. And I was like, "Okay, well, that's not an answer." And you could definitely tell looking at her that she had no clue how to answer that. I mean, guys, it's not just that I think Kamala Harris is a bad candidate. She is quite literally the least qualified candidate that we've ever had run for president. If you look at anything in her political career, I mean, shoot, she got in trouble, or not, I guess she didn't get in trouble, but
Sh-
people still pointed out today she kept people in their prison sentences longer than needed so that the state of California could have more free labor.
She also,
And she. Oh, continue.
I was gonna say, she also had when she was running for state AG against her former boss, she had massive fines for ethics code violations.
Not to mention, when you look at the reports of the people who have worked under her, and they come out and say that working under her has been a soul crushing experience because she is a nonstop bully to people. But even her own aides have said she bullies you relentlessly, but then she's not smart and doesn't know what to do. So you still have to walk her through everything. I think one of them specifically said that it's like having a toddler bully you and then taking the toddler to school because she
It's
just doesn't know what she's doing. I mean, and it makes sense. Look at how she started her political career. She was
sure.
a lady of the night, to put things easy, dating a older gentleman in politics who got her first gig, and almost immediately after she dumped him, right after she got
Two
that gig,
gigs, first
because
two gigs.
he was holding her first two gigs, yeah. But she dumped him right after because he was holding her back. Guys, she got into politics because she was a dude's girlfriend.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
that's absolutely maddening when you
there's
think
a
about it.
there's a little bit of misconstruction with that story. As far as like, so what actually happened? There's a great documentary on this from the Daily Wire. You can watch it for free on YouTube. Called Scamala Harris. It is like a 3-part series, really good. Basically, she was Will. This dude gave her first two jobs where she was making $190,000 a year. She only had to show up to like 12 meetings during the year, and she still showed up to only 6 or 7 of them. Basically, he broke up with her because his wife, which yes, he was married at the time, his wife got mad at him for having, because people were talking about him leaving his wife for Kamala Harris. And so it came out that his wife forced him to end that relationship. And then she got mad at him for, basically dumping her and leaving her behind. And so even though he helped her get her state attorney general job, she never recognizes that he even helped her because, of that. But, her record is horrendous. I mean, one of the things she did as AG, so to get the AG job, as a state prosecutor, she wanted to have her numbers up, her conviction rate. So there's 2 ways to do that. One is to actually win more cases, have your conviction rate go up by winning cases. The other way to make your rate go up is to throw out a whole bunch of cases. So basically, you dismiss charges on a whole bunch of cases and only prosecute the ones that are easy to convict and get a sentence for. And so she literally let murderers and rapists go. I mean, there's other stuff she did while she's in California, just as bad. But
Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't even know some of that. You just kind of hear things, especially with the political season going on. So, okay, so that's how it worked, actually. Interesting. Still not any better. That's so crazy.
yeah, it's pretty
The
bad.
dude's wife was like, "You gotta break up with her."
There's a
Man,
there's a very
that's
there's a specific quote that I will not say here, but you can go watch that documentary series. It's free on YouTube. Kamala Harris by Daily Wire.
Yeah, I'll definitely probably go back and watch that. That's absolutely crazy. All that to say that she's just so unqualified for anything that has to even touch the presidential
Presidency.
office. The fact that she's a vice president now absolutely blows my mind. I don't even know
Well, they're
And
like,
how that happened, but it's
that she's a
crazy.
stroke away from the office too.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
literally.
is true. Which is terrifying because
bef-
I don't even. What is her foreign policy? Just to not do anything. She's literally was put in charge of the border, and she didn't do anything.
she pays
And
people
thinks
more
that
money, is what she
Her
does.
foreign policy is worse than Biden's.
It's
At least Biden will halfway meet with Israel and say, you can kind of kill some terrorists. Whereas Kamala, her foreign policy is, let's bend the knee and cave to the Hamasniks. Let's cave to everyone who supports terror groups that murder innocent civilians,
and want to destroy our country.
and let's support the terrorists. Let's back out and leave our allies to fend for themselves. That's Kamala Harris's position. I mean, she literally chose Walz over Josh Shapiro as her VP. Shapiro is a very popular governor in a purple state,
With the
and yet
most
she
votes out of the
chose
swing states, by the way. 19
yeah,
electoral votes. Probably the most
and
important
yet
swing
she
state.
chose Walz over Shapiro because in her party there is so much anti-Semitism from her party, from the people that would vote for her, that she didn't want to offend them by choosing Josh Shapiro, who's a Jew and who had views that were supportive of Israel. The same kind of views that a lot of the Democrats that are in Congress, in the House, elected officials, they actually have those same views on Israel. There's a relatively small group of Democrats that are very anti-Israel, that are elected officials. The
Relatively,
same
yeah. I mean, kind
majority
of.
of the Democrats, and she chose Walz over him
Yeah,
because his views were uh, too conservative for her.
right. Um, we're kind of. We will have way more on Kamala Harris throughout the rest of these episodes, obviously, as the election heats up. There's one more thing up before we get off this topic I want to talk about. And it kind of plays into something else that happened this week, which was J.D. Vance, who is President Donald Trump's running mate for VP. He went on 3 interviews on Sunday for 3 separate networks, for CBS, for ABC, and ABC and for CNN. And in the first one for CBS, he made it very clear how radical Kamala Harris is. Because that's what she is. She's a radical. She's the most radical politician in the United States. Like, it's where she's at. She voted, and JD Vance says this, and it was really funny because he said he basically slightly misnamed this bill, this Abortion Survivor Act. It's the full name is actually, I have it right here. So he was talking about how she voted for the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, but what he said was the Born Alive Act, and he said that she voted for it. And then CBS made, during the middle of the interview, they cut away because it's an edited interview, and they say, we fact checked this and show that Kamala Harris voted against this bill. Well, the bill, because he was trying to state that she voted for children being aborted after birth. CBS crew was trying to say, no, she didn't. Well, the funny part is, that bill that he said she voted for, but she did not vote for, it is a bill that gives the right of citizenship
The right
and
of life.
the right of life to a child who goes through a failed abortion and is born alive. She voted against it twice. Basically, as soon as they are born, it mandates that the doctor that was trying to abort them has to immediately call for a transport to a hospital where they're to be taken care of as any other child. They have gained the right to personhood by surviving a murder attempt. And she voted against.
And
Now, when they fact checked her, she voted against it twice. So yes, she voted for children being aborted after birth twice as a
And
senator.
that's not where Americans stand. It
No,
just
it's not.
isn't.
Aaron was another. I know you wanted to talk about Elon Musk's views on energy.
Oh yeah, they started talking about basically energy because if a lot of people don't know, and I don't know how you don't know, would be living under a rock. Elon Musk is very big for clean energy. Now, he's not at the point where he doesn't think you should vilify oil and gas because obviously oil and gas have a place today and it's
They've
one of the
created a
more
society.
efficient ways for us to power things. Battery technology and stuff like that's just not where it should be. But they were talking about how he thinks, solar is going to be big coming up. But then they started talking, my personal favorite, nuclear energy, and how nuclear energy is amazing, underrated, and highly misunderstood today. A lot
No
of people
one.
kind
Yeah.
of overthink nuclear energy because they think of Chernobyl or they think of the Japanese
3 Mile
plant
Island. Yeah.
that had issues. But he even started talking about how people were overestimating fallout issues, saying, "Oh, you won't be able to go to this place,
For
in
2,000
2,000
years.
years." And Elon's like, "I actually have pictures of me
Live stream. He
eating
live
dinner
streamed him going
and
over there.
live streaming." Yeah, live streaming. And he's like drinking and like eating with locals 3 days after.
They're
Like,
farm grown food.
yeah, they're farm grown food 3 days after the fallout. Like, a lot of people don't understand. And I definitely do blame this on media because, oh, a nuclear reactor is going to blow up makes for a really fun movie or like TV plot. But in reality, yeah, fallout can be bad. But these places that we've said, oh, we won't be able to touch even after 1,000 years, we're able to touch now. Yeah, some of them may still have high radiation zones, but shoot, people can walk themselves all the way up to the reactors in Chernobyl now. People, when that first was started, they were like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to come over here for all these years and everything." And then, like 3 days later, we had people taking pictures right next to the elephant's foot. Now,
Oh yeah.
granted, you know that'll kill you really quick, but the land around it, people live and they go and they take videos of them exploring it. It's not
Yeah.
this wasteland. Nuclear energy isn't nearly as dangerous as people think,
It's also
and
clean.
it's extremely clean and extremely efficient.
And
One
you have to
nuclear.
ask yourself, what's the alternative? If is the alternative coal, oil, where you're still pumping all of the CO2 into the atmosphere, where it
It's definitely not wind, and you're
still,
not pumping CO. You're not pumping CO2 with nuclear.
yeah.
It's all steam.
Or is the alternative wind, where the wind turbines can freeze and you have no heat in the winter? Is it solar, where you only have power throughout half the day, so you freeze at night? Or if you're in Texas, it's still 100 degrees at night and you're still cooking while you're asleep and you
Yeah.
can't sleep?
Well,
Like,
Not to
even Elon
mention,
said to have batteries at night
yeah,
for the solar, but the problem with batteries
we
is
they
don't have
wear
that
out.
technology yet.
has anybody seen lithium mines? Lithium mines permanently scar the landscape. One of my favorite pictures is people making the comparison between a lithium mine and what should have been the Keystone Pipeline. And it's like this peaceful trees with like this metal pipe that just runs through it that's like well maintained. And then you have a picture of a lithium mine and it is just a giant crater in the ground and everything around it is destroyed. Like these people like the idea of battery because they don't see where they're made. They don't actually understand the processes that go into it. But when you look at it, in a lot of cases, batteries and lithium mining is extremely harmful to the environment. It's absolutely crazy. And then now, not even like getting into the efficiency of other energy sources. Like wind energy and wind turbines are the largest scam I've ever seen in my life.
Do you know how
A wind
big
turbine
they
will
are?
never produce as much power and as much energy as it took for it to be manufactured.
I mean, let's
It's
just.
operating at a net loss for its entire life.
Well, let's not even talk about
That's
that.
absolutely
Well,
crazy.
take away that. Say they improve it. Say they improve it and make it where it will. Okay. Do you know how many? Do you know how many windmills have to be made to account for one nuclear reactor? One. It's 420 to 460. Do you know how much space a wind farm takes up? And you can't put a wind farm everywhere. Wind farms have to be in
Nope.
very specific locations
Right.
because of the geography of the jet streams and whatnot. You're talking about something that is limited in resources. You're talking about limited resources. How about limited property that you can put those on? And on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
they have to take up way more space. 460 of these things, massive, massive wind farms that take up way more real estate that you could put farms, you could put more nuclear reactors on. One nuclear power
Houses.
plant. It's insane. We're not talking about megawatts, we're not talking about kilowatts. We're talking about gigawatts. And it's, there are some really good infographics you can look up online of how big is a gigawatt or how much energy does a nuclear power plant produce,
Yeah,
and
and
you'll
what's
be
what's
amazed.
really funny what's funny about that too is like the government's kind of laughing at people for being stupid on nuclear energy because some of the best vehicles operated by the United States government are nuclear powered ships and nuclear powered submarines.
I mean, the USS
Um,
Gerald Ford.
Nuclear power has been used for years now. I mean, my grandfather served on the first nuclear powered aircraft carrier, the Enterprise. We've been using nuclear power for years, and it's specifically for a lot of military use because of how efficient and how well it operates. But yet, for civilian life, people are so afraid because of the movies, and it's absolutely outrageous, especially with today's technology. Nuclear power is safer than it has ever been. We understand it better. We have the availability to have fallbacks and a lot more safety protocols caused by the issues that have happened in the past. And so I did think it was interesting that, Trump brought up nuclear power while Elon was talking about it. And Elon was like, oh, yeah, no, it's actually like a really good power source that people sleep on like crazy.
I don't think
And so
anyone's
that was
ever actually, yeah, I don't think anyone's ever heard that from Elon before. I think that was very surprising. At least for me, I'd never heard Elon talk about nuclear.
yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. He's the battery guy, right, with the electric
Exactly.
car.
He's
Yeah,
the
sure.
battery guy.
He's the
I know that's a
battery
really
guy.
like crude way to put it,
It's
but I mean that's
hilarious.
what he is. When you think Elon, what do you think? You think Tesla,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's like the immediate comparison that you think of. So I think I think it was interesting though. I think as a whole, the conversation went really well. There's obviously a lot of things we didn't touch on, but we already started to go a little bit longer than anticipated, and it's late for us.
I will say
Um,
as a combination, people are talking about how Trump for his campaign needs to be disciplined. Trump needs to not make these little jabs at some other Republicans that aren't exactly running things well or doing things whatever. Okay? I think this interview was pretty much flawless in my opinion. I mean, I didn't see anything. There might have been something that I missed, but I didn't see
it
any
was
glaring rant about crowd size or rant about January 6th or rant about here and that. I think he
it
stayed on the
was
issues
good.
and had a nice conversation.
It was definitely good. My only problem that I had is like, and this is just him. Trump is very long-winded when he talks, and so there were times where I was just like, "All right, cool, yeah, I got it. All right, let's move on." But he would just keep going on it, and I understand some people are like that too. And so that's just a personal thing. He's very long-winded, but no, yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Trump really needs to get his stuff together for this
I think he
election
did it
more
good
than
this time.
ever. He
Yeah.
needs to watch what he says. He needs to watch how he responds, and he needs to respond smart and honest because that's what people are looking for. People aren't here to see, a spitting contest between him and Kamala. They're here to see which presidential candidate is going to improve their life the most.
Right. Which I think he did a really good
And
and
job. Yeah.
and we just want to give a message out to our viewers. If you're watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, and you haven't really decided, or if you have decided on who you'll be supporting in the presidential election, just we ask that you have an open mind, that you keep an idea of what you want your vision of America to be, and you vote based off of how you think a person's policies are going to improve or not improve the country. Just vote with that in mind. And if you can't bring yourself to choose one particular candidate, you actually have four choices this election. One, vote for Kamala. 2, vote for Trump. 3, vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And 4, you don't have to vote. Not voting is also a vote. It's a way of telling the candidates that you don't really support anything of what they're saying. I mean, it's not very often that people will say, "Yeah, I advise you not to vote," but if you can't bring your conscience to vote for one person or the other, and you can't bring your conscience to say, "This is the direction I want America to go in," you have 4 options.
I would
Yeah,
also say that
absolutely.
you need to look at the facts. Don't just believe what we tell you or what anyone else tells you, especially the media. I would say don't be lazy.
Do
Look,
your own research.
do your research and think about it from a logical standpoint. Is this going to be better for me and my family, whether your family is you, your kids and your wife, or whether that's
Or your
you and your
dog.
2 cats. I mean, I don't care. That's still your family. And whatever that is, you need to think what's going to make my family's life better. And whatever you decide is through, the actual policies that they're proposing, that's what you should choose. But, that's your
Absolutely. I would go through and I would state, first off of Jared's points, not voting is very much an option. I personally don't recommend that purely because of the crazy state we're in right now. But if you truly can't decide and it is absolutely driving you insane, then don't vote because that is also your right. But also, I would encourage you, if you are able to decide if you like one more than the other or their policies line up with you and really look at their policies, really look at their policies, it is important to vote, right? Feel free not to if you don't want to. But at the same time, I would encourage you, if you're on the fence, to vote. Get out, make the difference of the right that you have. Because these decisions, whether you think they won't affect you or not, they will.
They're what shape
This is,
America.
they quite literally will shape your future. The next 4 years to even sometimes long lasting decisions that will shape the rest of your life. This isn't a game. This isn't a joke. This isn't something that grandpa and grandma talk about at the dinner table. This is your life. These are the events that are happening to you right now. And it is extremely, extremely important for you to get out and exercise your right to vote to ensure that the candidate you want comes out on top. Now, I know
And
who
it's
I'm going to
not
vote
something,
for.
yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, you can't vote for this person, you can't vote for that. It's your right as an American
Mhm.
citizen to vote for who you feel is right. But I also think you should evaluate your choices. Take a look. Don't listen to what we're saying. Don't listen to what the news is saying. Do your own research. Check things, right? One of the biggest things that we hear, right? Trump, oh, Trump did this. Trump said this. Trump does this. Well, actually look it up. Did he actually do that? What's the story behind it? What was the reasoning if he did do that? What were the effects? Oh, Kamala did this. Kamala did that. Today we were talking about how Kamala started her political career. If you don't believe us, go look it up. Do your own research. Make yourself educated. Because that's the
Did
only
Trump
way that you're
really
going to make a vote that you'll be satisfied with.
and do your own research. Did Trump really say that there's going to be a bloodbath if he lost? Or was he referring to an economic bloodbath? So
Exactly.
don't take your vote for granted. Make sure you do your research and make sure your vote is going to what you actually believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we thank you guys for joining us for our first ever pilot episode. There's definitely going to be a lot more going on, and we're definitely going to be able to probably be a little more organized in different topics as we get to do this a little more. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Dale, for joining me today as we discuss
anytime.
some of these things.
Thanks.
I'm excited to see where this goes. It's going to be an exciting next few months, especially with the election. There's something happening every single day, and it's exciting to see. It's scary to see all the different emotions that come with life and the different political issues that we have right now. But it's important to stay informed, whether it's from us, whether it's from somebody else. Make sure, as we said earlier, you do your due diligence. And of course, we will be doing, the plan is for us once a week. Um, And then once a month, we'll probably have a bigger subject. So that's just one thing to note out. And who you choose to vote for is going to depend on your worldview. Now, the most important decision that we ever make isn't who we are going to vote for president. It isn't the party that we're supporting or even the congressman that we're going to vote in as well. The most important decision that a person can ever make in their life is to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. I'm going to share some verses from the book of Romans with you. It's very simple to get saved. God so loved us that he took care of everything. He provided the way of salvation so that we as his creation could be reunited with him without having to do anything. The Bible says in Romans 3:23, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." All have sinned. All man. Whether you've lied, cheated, stolen, taken the Lord's name in vain, coveted, those are all sins, and every single person has done at least one, and one is what is enough to keep us separated from God for all eternity. And we have sinned, is a wage for it. There is a payment. Romans 6 verse 23 says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord." The just payment for those sins that we have is death, but we see later that God has given us a gift that would give us eternal life. And why? Because in verse 8 it says, "God commendeth his love towards us, and while we were yet those sinners, Christ died for us." So even though we had sinned, and our just reward was death and separation from God for all eternity in hell, he still sent his son, Jesus, to give us that gift that gives us eternal life. And there's nothing complicated when it comes to accepting this gift. There's not an act that you need to do. There's not, a certain amount of money you have to go give, pilgrimage. You don't have to do anything crazy like that. The Bible says in Romans chapter 10 that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. And then verse 13, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." And then we're going to go to John chapter 3. And we're going to read 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him may be saved." Ladies and gentlemen who are listening today, if you do not know Christ as your Savior, the number one most important decision that you can make today is to be saved. As we've just read through these verses, you can acknowledge that you are a sinner, you have done wrong. There must be a payment for that wrong that you have done. But God made a way for us to be able to be saved, even though we deserve death. Christ took that payment upon the cross and died for us. And the Bible says that if we are to believe and ask and confess our sins, that God is faithful and just to forgive us. Because as I just read in John 3:17, God didn't send his son to condemn us. He sent his son to save us because he loves us. If you have any questions concerning salvation, please feel free to reach out to us in the comments. Go to a church, ask somebody you know, or even there, right there in your seat. You can pray to God and ask forgiveness for your sins.
If you guys enjoyed the podcast, or if you very much disliked us, you can still go ahead and share it with people that might enjoy us a little bit better.
Hey, dude,
That's right. If you didn't like us, pass us to somebody who will.
pass us someone who
But
will
thank
leave a
you
comment.
guys for watching or listening.
Yep. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.